It's a matter of standing up for your rights so that there is a wall being rebuilt, because it used to be rebuilt between the citizens of the United States of America and the government.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 30th through October 7th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce gold Canadian maples at just $60 over spot. Next, we have 2024 1-ounce silver Britannia at $3.10 over spot. And finally, the 2024 1-ounce silver American Eagle is still just $5.25 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're delighted to have a first-time guest today. Francisco Rivero is a retired California sheriff. He joins us today. This is Saturday, October 5th, 2024. Francisco, thank you for joining us for this first time on Liberty and Finance.
Thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.
You and I have spoken a few times by phone and interacted by email as well about pointed concerns about the direction that our country is heading. And we wanted to introduce you to our audience because you have lived both inside and outside both the criminal justice and political system, and especially in the state of California, which, like it or not, in many ways is ahead several years of trends that happen in our country. So when people want to know where their locale is likely to be in the next decade or so, they often look to the coast, either New York or California, to see which way the culture is trending, which way political repression or government policies, that sort of thing, are trending. And it's not always, in fact, often not, for the best of the individuals. It's not always in concert with the Constitution. We wanted to get your perspectives on several topics from both your life as a sheriff and as a citizen in California, and see which way you think things are going and what you think is prudent for people to do to prepare for the changes that are likely to come. So again, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your willingness to do so. And first of all, if you could just let us know a tiny bit about your background, about how long you were sheriff in California, and also the main concerns that you observed while you were acting as sheriff. What led you into that? And while you were there, and then we'll get to what's going on right now in our country and areas that your perspectives will be particularly of interest to our audience.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having me. I was born in Havana, Cuba, and raised a good portion of my life in Cuba. So I'm well familiar with communist operations. And I fled Cuba, and I was welcomed in by this country, and I'm exceedingly grateful for that. And things were much different back then. I'm 66 years old at this point, and when I came, the country looked very different. I decided to go into law enforcement in the early 80s, and I joined SFPD. And I worked for SFPD, and I also started a mortuary. So I was an entrepreneur, the immigrant entrepreneur spirit thing. I started a mortuary crematory, which is where I'm sitting here today. Now I am retired. I've been retired since 2015 from the sheriff's office, and I was the elected county sheriff. I really fell into that job more out of a necessity than anything else. When I retired from SF Police, I didn't have the law enforcement thing quite out of my system. And I had moved to Northern California from San Francisco. Actually, Oakland is where I was living. And I got a job at the sheriff's office. And the sitting sheriff was having a lot of problems. He'd been there for a long time. You tend to get a little too comfortable when you have a position in politics too long, too many friends and favors. And there was an incident that occurred that really disfavored him with the public. I was asked to step in. I didn't want to run. I'm really not a politician, but I ran and I won. The guy who was most surprised was me.
I have to interrupt and say, as soon as you mentioned you're not a politician, you've already won the hearts of myself and our audience. So go ahead.
I am a lawman by trade. I've done a lot of things in my career, but law enforcement has always been the major thing. And when I stepped into the position of sheriff, I remember they sent you to this California sheriff's school. And the first day at that sheriff's school, I was told, okay, now you've been elected. That's the toughest part of all of this. Going forward, your main job is to stay in office. And I was shocked by that comment, frankly. I'll never forget that comment. And frankly, I was thinking, well, isn't my job to protect Ms. McGillicuddy? I think that's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? The general public, to make sure that things are good with the community, to put criminals in jail, to protect children. These are the functions. And as a, constitutionally elected sheriff, to protect the United States Constitution. And that is the backbone, and has been since our founding, of our ability to remain a free country. So as sheriff, I had issues. My first issue was with the press, right? I just didn't kowtow to them. I didn't want to really be one of those guys that was going to, I never went to a cocktail party. You get invited to all these things, through the Sheriff's Association, through the county government, and they're constantly trying to smooze you. And I'm just not into it, right? I'm kind of a private person. I just wanted to do my job, take care of the troops, and make sure that the public was safe and the criminals were where they belong, which is in jail. And the press didn't appreciate my standoffness, and I was constantly attacked. I mean, all kinds of just allegations that weren't true. I was accused of really everything you can imagine. The district attorney tried to indict me several times. It was a real difficult time, right? And I knew, not being a politician, not understanding that you have to play this program, that you have to be, kind of kneeling down to the higher powers that be, the elites. And believe me, there are elites in every part of the government, right? Starting from the county government all the way up to the federal government, to the White House and internationally. And these people expect, the lower people like me to kiss their ring. And I just refused to do so. I wouldn't play that program. And so I was attacked by the press. I was, again, they tried to indict me, tried to recall me. I was constantly, I spent so much time fighting off false allegations and other issues that it really, they win one way or another. The process is the punishment for when you cross the system. So I still did my job. I reduced crime enormously. Like there was a lot of problems where I was with drug dealing, a lot of speed, methamphetamine, a lot of opiates and opioids. We had an enormous problem with Mexican cartels growing weed up in our rural areas, impeding both on our county areas, on private lands, and on BLM land. It was a difficult task to bring that under control, but I fully did. And as sheriff, I would, I ran the jail. I ran the OES. I ran patrol. I ran Marine patrol. I did court security. I was in charge of all of that. So it's a big obligation, but the system doesn't help you. And, that's why I only did 4 years, frankly. It's just, I wasn't a good fit for that job, honestly, because of the political side of it. From the law enforcement side, yeah. You know, SF police, I worked narcotics, I worked street crimes units. I did the job of a law enforcement officer. Now, that said, not all law enforcement officers are on the up and up. And this is no criticism to the guys in blue, because I support the guys in blue more than anybody. And I would back my troops 100% as long as they were doing the right thing. You can make errors. You can do things that maybe could be perceived, particularly in this day of cameras and all this stuff, perceived as incorrect. It's easy to second guess a guy, in a shooting situation, which I have been in. Should he have shot? Should he not have shot? All these things. It's easy to sit in the back seat and start reevaluating when you got all the time in the world. But when you're making split second decisions, that's different. And I understood all of that. So I knew the guys that were, really trying to do the job, that had their heart in the right place and their minds in the right place, that were qualified and professional at what they were doing. But I'd say about 10% of the individuals that I inherited at the sheriff's office, they left a lot to be desired. They had, these authoritarian tendencies, what we used to call badge heavy at SF Police. And their way of doing business did not really comport with my expectations. I tried to fire several of them, and then the board of supervisors would just hire them back. They would, and then I tell you, I got sued more than probably any sheriff, and it wasn't sued by the public either. It wasn't like the public was playing happy with me. It was the bureaucrats and what I call the administrative state, right? These unelected people who have been there forever, who believe that that job was gifted to them by a higher power, and don't really respect the chain of command or the Constitution or the authority and responsibilities that are given to the position of the sheriff. The police chiefs, and I like to just interject, this is completely different, because police chiefs serve at the leisure of the mayor, right? So they are not elected officials. Like for me, the board of supervisors, they could call me in, they could do, and I spent plenty of time with those characters. And they could call you in and berate you and have the TV cameras there and do all this stuff. But, I can defend myself. Both physically and verbally. So I was able to fend them off, and I call them out on it, right? Just plain spoken. You see what you see. This is what it is. This is how this goes down. And that's the end of the story, and I'm elected by the people. I'm not elected by the board of supervisors. I'm not elected, they may individually vote, but it's really meaningless. They're always going to vote for the old boy, the guy who's going to, grease the skids, who's going to get their kid out of trouble when they're DUI or something like that. That's what they're looking for, right? In my idea, the administration and the application of justice has to be a fair deal, right? What applies to you applies to me. It applies to my kids. It applies to everyone equally. And that is true justice. And it's one of the things that we've lost here in this country. But the police chief, as opposed to your local county sheriff, and this is a really important position for those of you out there that really want to make a difference in their own community, you pick your sheriff carefully and listen to what he's saying and really digest exactly where he's coming from. Is he looking out for you, or is he looking out for himself and his friends? If it's the latter, don't elect it. If you have somebody in there that's the latter, get them out. There are ways to do that, but you have to become oriented and active in your own community if you want to survive in this day and age. I have a lot of suggestions for people concerning just how to prepare. I remember back, I believe it was maybe 2013, give or take. I was still sheriff, and you had a show called Reluctant Preppers. And I used to watch that regularly. I really enjoyed the things that you had to say. I agreed with 99, if not 100% of everything that you were bringing to people's attention, including, food freedom and taking care of your health. I remember when you and your wife were having issues with some health issues. Your constitutional freedom, your Second Amendment rights to carry a firearm. I would suggest, particularly under the Bruin decision, they loosened up the CCW standards a bit. Those don't apply to me because I'm a retired law enforcement officer. I'm exempt from the California code concerning carrying concealed weapons. But for the average citizen, I would strongly recommend trained, go get a CCW and carry. Because in this day and age, with the way crime is, and I'm currently sitting in the Oakland area, the East Bay of San Francisco, which is where I founded this business. It's called Pacific Internment Service. My son now runs it. I'm kind of bowed out. I do some stuff here, but, I'm semi-retired. I like to do other things, but you carry your weapon, learn how to use it. Keep your situational awareness all the time. There are things that you can do to protect yourself. You must be aware. And one of the biggest distractions to situational awareness is a thing called the cell phone. I see people constantly walking across the street. They got the light. Okay, fair enough, but they got their nose stuck in the cell phone. People run lights all the time, and you versus a vehicle isn't going to do real well. But you also, you pull into certain areas, which I call transitional spaces, and you have to be on high alert, because in this transitional spaces, this is where people get hurt, where generally crooks who are mostly opportunistic, right? They're if you look like a victim, you're going to be a victim. But you can do other things beyond just not looking the part of somebody who is an easy mark. Okay. You can be aware, like you're pulling into a bank and you're getting, you're just going to make a deposit. You have to have your eyes wide open. I mean, if somebody can pull a robbery at 211, as we call them here in the state of California, and you get involved in something like that, like a bank takeover, and I've seen those in San Francisco, and a lot of those don't turn out well for the people inside the bank. So you carry your gun, you keep your eyes open, stay trained, right? So you gotta go to the range. You gotta know how to operate your weapon. You gotta know everything about it, so that when hopefully this doesn't happen, but if it comes the time that you need to use it, then you are at least have some type of hope of getting out of that alive. There are other things that I suggest to people. There is, I believe this fellow's name is Andrew Branca. He has a book called The Law of Self-Defense. He's a lawyer. That's what he does. He if it's a self-defense situation, I mean, you can just expect to be charged if you have to use a firearm. That's just the way the cops are going to roll. You shoot somebody, whether you're right or wrong or whatever, they're going to put handcuffs on you and they're going to bring you in. My suggestion, and this is a general suggestion, I tell this to my son and I tell it to my friends and I tell it to anybody I know. Do not say a word. You do not make any statements to the police or to any law enforcement agent at all, ever, period. There's plenty of time. You lawyer up. You get everything, all your facts straight, because, these situations are stressful. And then you can make a statement. But in the meantime, all you say is nothing. That's the answer. You don't say a word. Again, unlikely this will ever happen to any of your viewers, but it can, right? It certainly can. And it's better to be prepared than not be prepared. As far as home defense, I always suggest that you have a perimeter and again, I am pro law enforcement, and I really want to emphasize that, okay? But not all cops are good. That's just, people think, hey, you got a uniform on, you can trust this guy, he means well, and that's not the case, 100% of the time. There are bad apples in any profession, right? There are bad pilots, there are bad doctors, there are bad lawyers. So, there are bad cops out there. So as far as home defense is concerned, I would suggest a perimeter with a fence, with a sign, 2 signs, one that says no trespassing and one that says no soliciting. There are court cases that will protect you. So if an officer comes and he wants to come knock on your door, first of all, I wouldn't answer the door myself. That's just the bottom line, because there's a thing called a knock and talk, right? Which is, it's commonly used when I was taught it 40 years ago. And, the officer uses a pretext. Hey, we're coming here, your neighbor and this and that and the other thing. And then next thing you know, oh, hey, we smell weed. Now we have probable cause to investigate. And next thing you know, they're searching your home. And you have a Fourth Amendment right to keep the government out of your house. And I would strongly suggest that you keep that in mind all the time. But with a no soliciting sign and a no trespassing sign, that gives you the curtilage around your home, with your fence line, and it prohibits them from coming in without a search warrant. And for a cop, search warrant, I've written hundreds of search warrants, but for a cop to obtain a search warrant, it's gotten, I guess, easier in the last 10, 15 years. Judges don't pay much attention to these things anymore. They're not, it's really a shame, but from my perspective, judges don't have a good grasp, most do, again, not all, of the Constitution and the right to privacy of people. Because the right to privacy has been violated so much by, these big tech companies and, the cell phone, and which is a tracking device, and all these other people. It's become normal, right? These violations of your constitutional rights have been normalized in this day and age, and that's not right. So you protect your home. You don't let anybody in, except your family and your by invitation, your friends. If the cops show up and they see a no trespassing sign and they cross that without a warrant or without some exigent circumstance, some probable cause, a fleeing felon, a crime in progress. There's a few exceptions to this, but for the most part, they just can't show up and try to, open up a BS conversation with you to develop probable cause to later either get probable cause for a search warrant or to come in and do a warrantless search. And it's important that you keep that in mind, because, your home is your castle and you're entitled to protect it, and you should protect it, because that, the more the people allow their privacy to be invaded, the more the government will intrude on your privacy. That's just the slippery slope that we are facing on a regular basis. The same thing with your vehicle. You get pulled over, you want to be really respectful. There's this thing called Contempt of Cop. All right. If you want to get in trouble on a traffic stop, you start mouthing off, and unfortunately, they're telling people these days, oh, it's fine to mouth off at a cop. It's fine to, give them a ration and see what happens. Right. Well, that doesn't turn out well either for the most part. So, just have your license, registration, insurance available. You pull over. Sir, how are you? Thank you very much. Hand him the license, registration, insurance. Keep your hands on the steering wheel so you don't freak him out, right? Because you don't want 2 nervous people at that scene, right? You're going to be nervous no matter what because you're being pulled over. You don't want to make him nervous, right? So keep your hands where you can see, because that's what the cops look for, right? Your hands. That's what kills you. It's, let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. You'll always hear that from a cop when he's stressed out, because he knows what you have in your hand could end his life, right? You say, yes, sir. Here's my license, registration, insurance. Hey, where are you coming from? I prefer not to answer that. Okay. You do not want to give probable cause. Hey, listen, I'm wondering would you mind if I just look through your car? Yeah, absolutely. I would mind. I am, exercising my Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable search and seizure. And with all due respect, okay, this is respectfully. You don't have to get upset. You don't have to get hot under the collar. With all due respect, I am not consenting to a warrantless search. Period. Okay. Never let a cop into your car. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be carrying anything. You don't have to have drugs in there. You don't have to have done anything wrong or anything like that. It's a matter of standing up for your rights so that there is a wall being rebuilt, because it used to be rebuilt between the citizens of the United States of America and the government. Because realize what I was a government enforcer. That's exactly, practically speaking, what my job was. And I really believe that the slippery slope has gone way too far on many different levels. But from the law enforcement perspective, I think there needs to be some barrier put up, that the citizens understand their rights, that the citizens know that they shouldn't be tricked. Because if you get into a guy's car or his home by trick and device, they might be able to justify that. And then, there's a way to slant reports and make things look. And again, this 90% of law enforcement doesn't do that. You run into that 10% guy and you have a problem, so it's better just to treat it all professionally, but keep them away from you, right? As far as don't do any, listen, the vehicle code here in the state of California is thicker than the Bible, right? I mean, it is. There are more like bullshit violations in that vehicle code than I can shake a stick at. I can get in a radio car, follow you for 3 minutes, and get several violations that would give me probable cause to turn the blue and red lights on and pull you over. Okay, that's just the bottom line. If your tags are, in the wrong reverse, your taillight's out, your light on your license plate is out, you got a cracked windshield, you got something hanging off of your rearview mirror. It's endless, and it's meant to be like that, so that if the cop needs probable cause, he can articulate probable cause to pull you over. That kind of in a nutshell, just you got to protect yourself. You got to stay frosty. You should stay strapped if you can, if you're at all, legally, right? Just go down. At this point in time, you don't even have to tell them, it used to be before Bruin that you had to tell them, hey, I'm a jeweler. I'm carrying $50,000 worth of jewelry, or I'm a banker and I got all this cash on me, which this days is worthless. But in any event, and then you have to have justification to have a CCW. Not anymore. You just say it's for self-protection, as long as you don't have a felony record, and as long as you don't have any misdemeanors involving moral turpitude. The sheriff of that county needs to issue you that CCW. And if people start having problems with the sheriff of that county for not issuing the CCW, that's a good time to get rid of that guy. Okay, that's a good time. You look, wait, when's the next time this guy's election comes up? All right, let's get rid of him and find somebody who believes in the Second Amendment. And who was a constitutional sheriff, who believes in the Constitution, who believes that his rights and responsibilities are grounded, centered, and rooted in the Constitution of the United States of America. That's the bottom line. I don't know if you have any questions for me in particular.
Well, you've covered a lot of territory. I think that was very helpful. One of the things you mentioned way back in the beginning was you got into this because to be a lawman, and that law and order is something that's of value to you, and you believe it's of value to the community, and you believe in protecting the ordinary person. What is your take on the trend that seems to be evident in our culture for the past decade at least, of this tension, which seems to be shifting from a longtime adherence to the rule of law and the Constitution, and shifting towards what was exemplified by slogans such as defund the police, or stand down and let the rioters riot because they're upset, therefore they have a right to burn and loot and all these things because it's mostly peaceful, or that sort of thing. Can you talk to us for a moment about that apparent trend from the rule of law and the Constitution to standing down and defunding the police?
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for September 30th through October 7th, 2024, while supplies last. First, we feature backdated 1-ounce gold Canadian maples at just $60 over spot. Next, we have 2024 1-ounce silver Britannia at $3.10 over spot. And finally, The 2024 1-ounce silver American Eagle is still just $5.25 over spot. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.